off the ground. Egypt, being in Africa itself, is a life-changing experience. I wish all of y'all could go. If you haven't been, see it, smell it, feel it, eat the food, be with the people, and it will change your life. Tell you a quick story. My early travels to Egypt, my early travels to Africa were all in Kemet. Finally, in the year 2000, I was invited to Southern Africa. I did some big lectures in Zimbabwe and Namibia, in front of thousands of people. And every time I would give a lecture, the same thing would happen. I'm in the middle of the talk, and all at once I started talking about these dreams, these nightmares I had been having. And they were twofold. One is, I was in my neighborhood somewhere, but I could never find my home. I knew I lived around here somewhere, but no matter what alley, what boulevard, what street, what avenue I went to, I could never find my home. And actually, that was very unsettling. And the other dream was, I would go visit my family in Los Angeles, where I grew up, and they wouldn't want me to be there. And they would make that very clear to me. They wouldn't eat with me. I couldn't sleep on the bed. They'd make me sleep on the floor. And that's crazy. My family and I are very, very, very close. And I realized in Africa, in Southern Africa, that those dreams had a much greater significance than I ever realized. And that because we were taken from our homes, a lot of us deep in our psyche, I think, have a strong sense of homelessness. Where do I come from? And where do I belong? And because we were separated from our families, I think there's a fear, there's an anxiety about relationships. And I would say that. And the audience to a person, it happened every time, would say, but Runoko, this is your home. And we are your family. You know, I never had those dreams anymore after that. Being in Africa exorcised those demons that all of us have deep in our minds without even realizing that. Dr. Ben was the first of us that I'm aware of to actually take large groups to Africa so you can see the pyramids for yourself. And then here's John G. Jackson. He wrote Mankind and Civilization, Ages of Gold and Silver, Was Jesus Christ a Negro, The African Origin of the Garden of Eden, Christianity Before Christ, and a staunch atheist. If you were a Christian and you were around John G. Jackson, you were going to have a real hard afternoon because he was not going to spare you. Right. And then the great Ivan Van Sertima, maybe my greatest mentor. I worked with Ivan for 25 years. As you know, he was the leading authority in the world on the African presence in ancient America, but also the founder of the publication, the Journal of African Civilizations. And you know, I took a group to Mexico a few months ago. I've been taking groups to Mexico for 5 years to see the Olmec heads in black communities. And on this particular trip, there were a number of young people. I'm 64 now, so a lot of people are young now. And there were some kids, forgive me for saying it, in their late 20s and early 30s, and they were asking me questions like, Dr. Rashidi, have you ever heard of a woman named Frances Welsing? Do you know this man, Ivan Van Sertima? And it never occurred to me that a lot of people don't know who these folk are. Now, this is a classic. And this was sent to me by my brother, Tony Browder. There's a legendary, now he really is a legend, Leonard Jeffries. And there's the great Dr. Asa Grant Hilliard III in the middle. And there I am, and we're at the wedding of Tony Browder in Cape Coast, Ghana. Now, that's a classic picture, isn't it? And Rosalind is over there somewhere. This is Mother Tanetta Muhammad, the widow of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who for some reason liked me and thought I was a great scholar. I know she was confused, I shouldn't joke. She thought I was a great scholar, and she would come to my lectures. And in April 2011, she invited me to come to Mexico with her to lecture to African Mexicans, sisters and brothers who have the lowest self-esteem of any group of black people I've ever met, except the black untouchables of India. This is Gail Hansberry, and she's the daughter of William Leo Hansberry. William Leo Hansberry was a Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark of his day in the 30s and 40s. I never met him. He died before my time. But I met his daughter at a recent presentation in Washington, D.C., and she says, you know, my dad would have loved your work. And just a thrill went through me when I heard that. I don't want to leave the sisters out. This is Dr. Adelaide Sanford. You know, when she speaks to you, and she's got to be about 91 now, she always says, and my beloveds. And she says it in a manner, it really makes you think she believes that. And she feels that. And now this is a true African queen. Here I am with Senator Bill Perkins and Nana Camille Yarborough receiving an award at the Schomburg. And this is Marimba Ani at a UNIA convention, an author of Urugu. I don't think we give the sisters enough credit, so this is my opportunity to make up for it. This is Dr. Karen Ann Johnson, and she's the world's leading authority on the African-American scholars, educators, Anna Julia Cooper and Nanny Helen Burroughs. We're in Mexico in front of an artifact called El Negro. Yeah, that means the black. That's what the people who dug it up called it. This is an Olmec artifact that you never see. White scholars be talking about the Olmec, they just leave this out of the discussion because they're intellectually corrupt. Why is history important? This is where I'm going day after tomorrow. This is Boston, and this is a hotel I stayed in a few years ago. This is a hotel that Malcolm X used to work in. I didn't realize it at the time. Now I use this picture of Malcolm because it's very, very profound. Now we know Malcolm, our black shining prince. And Malcolm's parents were Garveyites, even though Malcolm at some point in time went astray and became tantamount to a common criminal. And he was incarcerated, unfortunately. He came under the influence of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He read J. Rogers, he read Carter G. Woodson, and he was transformed. What better example could I give to show the importance of knowledge of self? What better example could I give? Because people will say, Runoko, why is this important? Why should I care about what happened yesterday? I don't have a job. My woman done left me. I got a warrant out. And here you talk about African history. Well, I would say if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. How do you plan for today and tomorrow if you don't know what happened yesterday? What you do for yourself depends on what you think of yourself. And what you think of yourself depends on what you know of yourself. And what you know of yourself depends on what you have been told. So if you are told you don't have a history, that you come from nothing, you'll embrace the N-word. You won't run from the B-word. It'll roll easily off your tongue. But if you know you come from greatness, you will aim for the stars. No goal is too much for you to achieve. And this is what we must instill in our youth. The sense that you come from greatness, you come from royalty. Act like it. Achieve it. Build on that. That's why history is important. Of course, one of my favorite images of Malcolm X giving the great J.A. Rogers, who lived in New York for such a long time, a big award. This is from Muhammad Speaks newspaper around 1960. This is interesting. This was my third trip to Cuba. I've been taking groups there the last couple of years. On the one side of this is a plaque of Martin Luther King. I didn't know it. All we had to do was walk on the other side, and there's a plaque of Malcolm X. Wow. Another example of the importance of history. This is a brother I went to high school with, Stanley Tookie Williams. One of the most fearsome brothers that ever lived. The co-founder of the social organization, aka gang called the Crips. We went to high school together. Now and then he'd walk up to on the bus stop and see me and say, give me a quarter. And sometimes I'd give it to him, and sometimes I'd give him the middle finger and got away with it, right? This is before I knew who the Crips were. If I knew who the Crips were at that time, I said, here's 50 cents, you take it, please. They didn't have the reputation that they developed. 20 years passed by. And Tookie went on to do his thing, and I went on to do my thing. By this time, through working with Dr. Van Sertima, my work had been circulated in the prisons. And I'm getting all kind of letters, I still do, from brothers in the penitentiary all the time. Can you send me a book? Well, one time it went beyond that. And a woman came up to me, or contacted me, and says, my friend is on death row. And he and two other brothers, former members of the Crips, are also on death row. And they've written a book about African history and African children and African poetry. And they heard about you. And they want to know if you could help get it published. What a relationship we developed. And Tookie will call me from death row, sometimes 3 o'clock in the morning, and cry like a baby. He wasn't afraid to die. I don't think he was afraid of anything. But he was so angry at the way he spent it. He felt that his life had been wasted. He was a natural leader. And he would say, Runoko, if only I knew my history then, if only how different life would have been. And this is what I have to tell the young people. I started doing this presentation at Purdue University in February. So I developed it with young people in mind. My recent books is my most recent book, My Global Journeys in Search of the African Presence. My first book for children, Asada Garvey, that's my daughter. I took her and her mother to Egypt with me 2 years ago. I wanted to be able to say that my daughter saw the pyramids for the first time with her daddy. I think I'm a very good historian. I work at it very hard. But what I'm most proud about is being a good father. That brings the balance to my life. Unfortunately, my daughter doesn't seem to give a hoot about my work. I took her to Los Angeles last year. She stayed with me for the Christmas holidays. I took her in my studio. I said, honey, how do you like my library? She said, Dad, you have a magnificent library. As soon as you die, I'm going to sell all these books and get the money. That's how my daughter thinks. She didn't mean any harm. That's just her focus, okay? And so what does that mean? That means if biological family doesn't accept what you do, you need extended African family. That's why this gathering today here is important, because a lot of times the people who are closest to us are the ones who reject us the most. And so we must reach beyond that. Ivan Van Sertima said, Runoko, the worst thing is to feel that you are alone. And this is my book dedicated to Dr. Van Sertima. My little travel notes. My book on the African presence in early Europe. My 6th book on the African presence in early Asia. These images that I'm going to show you now are what the first modern human beings look like. This is a reconstruction, according to scientists, of the first modern human from Morocco. The first one we have bones of. We can do DNA analysis and reconstruction 160,000 years ago. He looks like 50 Cent. This is what BBC says the first people of Eastern Europe look like. This is what the scientists in England say the ancestor of the Brits was. This is 10,000 years ago. And this is a brother called Cheddar Man. Cheddar was the place these bones were found over 100 years ago. And now they've been reconstructed through DNA analysis. So the British must really be having a tough time. You got this sister that's been married into the royal family, and then they find out that their very ancestor was black. They must be suffering, saying, oh my God, what did I do to deserve this punishment? This is out of place. This is from Asia. These are reconstructions of the first people of the Far East. And this is a reconstruction of Lucia. Lucia is the first person that we know of in the Americas. This is a reconstruction of a skull found in Brazil that's at least 11,500 years old. And this was damaged in a fire in Rio de Janeiro in September. Fortunately, we just found out that the skull survived. This is representative of the first people of the Americas. So the question is, where do white people come from? Because until quite recently, there wasn't none of us. I mean, there wasn't none of them. Humanity began in Africa and only Africa. And those Africans went out to people of the world long before the Ma'afa, long before enslavement. Here's another piece from Brazil that's been reconstructed. A black man who lived in Brazil 10,000 years ago. And this is what I do. For the last 20 years, I have not unpacked a suitcase. And during that period of time, I've been able to visit 121 countries. In some cases, over and over and over again. I just got back from Egypt Monday. It was my 24th visit. And this is one of my favorite photographs. This is with the Batwa, the so-called pygmies, on the border of western Uganda and eastern Congo. So for years, I traveled around the world visiting these diverse black communities. But right now, my big thing is the museums, and that's what I'm going to get into now. Here's another photograph illustrating that in the British Museum. And finally, the archaeological sites. This was where I was on my 60th birthday, visiting the ruins of Pompeii, now the museums. This is the Ashango bone. And all these photographs are originals. Very rare. These are pictures, for the most part, I took myself. And I'll dedicate this presentation to King Simon. Okay? Give him another round of applause for all the sacrifices that he makes. Now this is the Ashango bone. It's 25,000 years old. It's in the Natural History Museum in Brussels, Belgium. Africans were engaged in mathematics 25,000 years ago. And this is not the oldest counting stick from Africa in the world. And then, of course, we have to stroll through the Nile Valley. This is the Taseti incense burner. On the side is a man seated on a throne, 6 generations before the first dynasty of Kemet. Just a cheesy little map of Egypt. And then we're going to go through the dynasties. A dynasty is a family of rulers. one member of the family coming after the other for an extended period of time. This is the last known ruler of the pre-dynastic phase. His name is the Scorpion King. This is at Oxford University. And this is Ahamena. This is Narmer. Sheikh Anta Diop identified him as the first pharaoh. And this is King Djoser. This is the king under whom Imhotep worked. And also another brother that you may not be familiar with named Hessi Ray. Hessi Ray was the chief of dentists, and he's considered the world's first surgeon. He is a contemporary of Imhotep, and they both served under this king, Djoser. Look at that hair, look at those locks. This is nearly 5,000 years ago. And of course, this is the tomb that was built for him, what we call the Step Pyramid, and there it is up close, and there's the brother who designed it. Genius man, Imhotep. If there was one person I was going to nominate as the greatest African in history, Imhotep would probably be that person. He was not of royal birth, and yet he did things that we still talk about today. And for those of you who have doubts about his ethnicity, I show you this picture of his mother. This is a little statue in the Louvre in Paris. One day I was walking through the Louvre, and a voice seemed to call me and says, "Runoko, turn around and look at me." And this statue seemed to be calling my name. Now, there should be no doubt about her ethnicity, but if there is, I compare it to these sisters from the Omo Valley, Sister Yah in southern Ethiopia. Let's look at it again. A bunch of these. This is not a coincidence. I don't think we study Egypt too much, but I would like to see us connect ancient Egypt with the rest of Africa more effectively, because Egypt was an African civilization. And there's another one. You see the comparison? This is King Huni. I photographed this again this morning in Brooklyn. One of the pyramid builders, this is his pyramid. And there I am in that pyramid chamber. This is King Sneferu, the father of the king called Khufu, builder of the Great Pyramid, and this is his pyramid. And this is King Khufu. This is the builder of the Great Pyramid. And this photograph has been identified as King Khufu just within the last 2 or 3 years. I took these pictures in Germany in January 2017 and 2018. Let me show you again. Look at that happy to be nappy hair. I could do a whole presentation. In fact, I want to do it just on hair, because that should tell the tale right there. His pyramid ship, where it was buried. The Great Pyramid and the pyramid of Khufu's son Khafre. And this is Khafre. You can always tell this pyramid because it still has limestone on the top. This is probably what the pyramids actually look like. They're made of granite, but they were coated with limestone. And they were buffed, and they were polished, and they shined them up. Now the Great Pyramid, the pyramid of Khufu I just showed you a moment ago, sits on 13 acres. And it's 486 feet high. And it's composed of 2.3 million blocks of hard granite stone that weigh about 5,000 pounds each. And when it was finished, it glittered like a diamond. Now imagine that, a diamond 486 feet high, sitting on 13 acres of land. This is what our ancestors did. We may never build another pyramid, but we are capable of doing great things. That's the whole point. All right. Khafre again. And of course, a lot of people believe that he is responsible for having this monument Hormaki carved in his own likeness. This one I show because this drawing was done 50 years before Napoleon. A lot of us are led to believe that Napoleon trained his artillery on the face of Hormaki, the Great Sphinx, and that's a complete myth. And I'm the last person to defend Napoleon, believe me. But this was done 700 years ago by a group of Muslim fanatics. And Napoleon just got a bad rap. There's a close-up. This is what I love to see. I love to see black men and black women together.
Amen. I say.
Black love is the greatest form of resistance to white supremacy. Now here's a brother that is racially and I'm going to put it on the brothers more than anybody. Racially, because there are a lot more sisters than brothers. See, let me just tell you what I was going to tell you before I digress. Here's a brother racially profiled from cradle to grave. When you walk in the store, the security guard focuses on you because he just assumes you're going to steal something. You're the last one to get the job. The first one to get fired. Usually you're the first one to get killed in the movie. And yet a brother will quite often tell you when he got that blonde, I couldn't help who I fell in love with. Are you stupid? You couldn't control your emotions? What do you mean you couldn't help it? That you don't see color, you don't see race? More than anything, the idea of black men not being with black women frightens me. Because if we're not talking about black love, what are we talking about? What's the point? How can you not see color? Are you Mr. Magoo? Are you Stevie Wonder? It's all around you. Look at how they are holding and embracing one another. You do not see this in Greco-Roman art. You might see two men holding one another. You might see a man and a goat, a man and a pig. You might see a bunch of women holding one another, but you will not see a man and a woman in Greco-Roman art. Plato thought that the idea of a romantic relationship between a man and a woman was a form of insanity. That's a platonic relationship.
Tell the truth.
So here we use a lot of these cast-off terms without really understanding what we're talking about. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be in a platonic relationship. Look how proud they are to be together. And she is not inferior. In ancient Africa, the black man's sense of security was so powerful that he did not feel threatened by the black woman. The line of descent is traced through the female side of the family. All right. From Dynasty 5, more pyramids. And that is what Baba James was talking about. These are the pyramid texts. This is from the tomb of a 6th dynasty, a pharaoh named King Teti. This says it all. Now here is a king who became the king of Egypt when he was only 10, and he died on the throne at the tender age of 104. But his mother is the throne here, as you can see. I love black women, and I'm not scared of them. I don't run from them, I run to them. And I can never say enough good things about black women. And if you ever have anything bad to say about black women, don't come around me. Just keep stepping. We're just going through the dynasties. Now this is Nephet Mentohotep II. This is the first time that I'm aware of that we see the color black used in ritualistic fashion. We know that these were black people, they were Africans. But black also had a symbolic importance. And the color black represented deification. It represented divinity. Make a long story short, the color black was the color of God. And for some of us, it still is. And this is his queen, because what good is a king without a queen?
Right.
Look at the hair. More hair. I flew all the way to Lisbon, Portugal to make this photograph. And I joke and not joke, I tell people, you know, I used to have an afro like that, and the audience just burst out laughing. They can't imagine that. So I decided to put this picture from Somalia in there, and then just for good measure, I put a picture of me in there when I was 18. I did have an afro, and you know who that is standing next to me? That's my father. And next to him is his brother, my Uncle Justice. That was his name, Justice. And this guy is the toughest brother I think I ever met. I've been traveling most of my life, and you know how I started traveling? I started traveling to San Quentin to visit him in maximum security prison because he shot a cop in the 1950s. Yeah. It took a pair of them to do that. From Dynasty 12, the 12th dynasty, you can see, if you see a comparison here. All from the 12th dynasty, look at these locks. This is my favorite king, Amenhotep III. Those big Barack Obama ears. The idea was the bigger the ear, the more you could hear. The more you heard, the more you would know. The more you knew, the more power you would possess. This is in Vienna, Austria. Can't get any more African than that. In Copenhagen, Denmark, in the form of a sphinx. Look at the hair. The first known example of martial arts. This is in the Bani Hassan tombs 4,000 years ago. I'm going to take a group there next year. From the 18th dynasty, Thutmose I. And this is, I've been saying this is Hatshepsut right here. Hatshepsut is the most powerful of the female kings, the female pharaohs, and this is her temple. And on that temple is his full-figured sister, who is the queen of the land of Punt. the land of God, according to the people of Kemet. Her nephew Tutmos III, a great militarist, and his obelisks are taken. One of them is now in Istanbul, Turkey. And here's God Amen painted black. That's where we get the expression, Amen. And this is Amenhotep III. This is the husband of Queen Tai, the father of Akhenaten, Tutankhamun's grandfather, Nefertiti's father-in-law. I found this one in the Netherlands in a town called Leiden. He reigned for 38 years. He is maybe the greatest king in the history of Kemet. Look at that African face. Look at it hard, because you ain't going to see it on the Discovery Channel or the Learning Channel, and you damn sure ain't going to see it on BET. It ain't going to be on Empire or Scandal or Greenleaf or whatever it's called. Here he is again and again and again. But what good is a king without a queen? This is Queen Tai. And there she is as a young sister. And again and again. And looking serious. And that's the one. That's the one we've all seen. This is what a regal African queen looked like in ancient Egypt. And there they are together. And two of their daughters. And just to compare with these two girls in Ghana, I used to teach school in Ghana. And one of the things about some African countries, when the girls go to school, they make them keep their hair cut short until they're about 14 or 15. So the hair is not an issue. You don't see them with a weave down to their waist. And you don't see brothers with their pants sagging. I love to teach school there. I never have to say, sit up, be quiet, stop texting, stop sexing. I'm talking, and I don't have to pass through a metal detector. And these young people act like they want to learn. They are an open vessel. Yes. Yes. And to me, they're adorable. One of the sons of Amenhotep III and Queen Tai, and compared to this photograph of his young brother in the middle, look at the attitude this little boy has. Like, Dr. Rashidi, you better get this picture straight, okay? Because otherwise, we're going to have a long talk. This is Akhenaten, identified as the world's first monotheist, although Africans always knew that God was one. These pictures are so lifelike, it's almost like they could talk to you. And of course, Nefertiti, the ones you don't see. Look at those beautiful lips. Only a black woman can have lips like that. I'm standing in front of the ruined palace of Nefertiti at Tel Amarna. I'm going to take a group there next year. Nefertiti pouring Akhenaten a goblet of wine and holding hands. Romantic love. These Africans actually fell in love with each other. They were romantic. And they wrote love poems, and they liked to make love, and they liked to party, and they liked to drink wine and drink beer, and they ate well, and they liked to wear their good clothes, and they liked to smell good. I can relate. It's so easy to identify with them. If we were to go in a time warp and be transported back to Kemet 2,000 years ago, we would fit right in. Why? Because ancient Egypt was an African civilization. It's not hard to understand. And look at these Amarna heads. These aren't aliens. They didn't come from another universe. And you could compare, no, it's not the best picture, with the heads of these Africans from Central Africa. These are the young girls as they grew up. And this is in their tomb. I'm the only person that I know that's been in the tomb of the daughters of Akhenaten and Nefertiti. And I had to pay a hefty bribe of about $50 to take that photograph. But I had to have that photograph because once I saw those booties, I had to show it to the world. Because it tells the whole story. In the tomb. This is called A Stroll in the Garden. King Tut and his beautiful young bride. And these are images of Tutankhamun you rarely see. This is Amos Nefertari, a black woman who was deified. An unknown king in one of those tombs. A banquet scene. This is what we use on the cover of my calendar. And hair extensions. Yes, hair extensions. All I can guarantee is that they didn't get them from the Koreans on the corner. That's all I can tell you. Or the Vietnamese.